At the time I create this video, I have been using the Nikon Z8 for my wildlife photography for the last 4 months. In terms of a lens, I have been using the Z8 exclusively with the Z 100-400mm, and I've added the Z 1.4x Teleconverter when I felt it would be of benefit. With 4 months of experience behind me, this feels like a good time to share my thoughts on this setup for photographing wildlife. This is not a review video covering every detail about the camera. It is not a video comparing the Z8 to other cameras. Rather, it is a video personal to me which highlights the features that are important to me in my wildlife photography. It covers how I find the performance of this setup, including the lens and teleconverter, and gives my honest impressions after significant use of the Z8. When considering purchasing a camera for wildlife, many people's first thoughts will be of image quality, autofocus performance, megapixels, and so on. While I will talk about these features and much more, I would like to begin with an often overlooked consideration, but one which I feel is incredibly important, and that is the overall design of the camera body. I find the Z8 to be very well designed for wildlife photography. I really like the placement of the various dials and buttons, with one exception which I'll detail soon, and I appreciate the level of customization that is offered through configuring the camera's controls via the menus. I particularly like the FN1 and FN2 buttons located near the lens mount, which are perfectly placed for use with my right hand. These are incredibly useful during wildlife photography for quick access to required functionality such as changing the autofocus area mode. The viewfinder is clear, blackout free, and nice to use with a high FPS option, which is of course of benefit when tracking moving wildlife. The body itself and all buttons and dials feel well made and are of very good quality. When it comes to a wildlife photography setup, we all have different requirements. Some of us may go on long hikes, some may always shoot from close to a car, some may prefer smaller, lighter cameras, some may find a larger camera fits their hands better, and they don't mind a bit of weight. So I can only give my own thoughts regarding this, but for me, the Z8 feels really good in my hands. It is a great size for me, and now that I have been using it for a while, operating it has become second nature. Partnered with a Z 100-400mm lens, I feel this combination is a nice size and weight, considering the performance and image quality on offer. I've used it close to a car, and I have carried it on very long difficult hikes, and I found it very manageable regardless of the situation. So what is it that I don't like about the Z8 button placement? Well, it is one specific button called the focus mode button. By default, it is used for changing the focus mode and the autofocus area mode. These are two very important functions when shooting wildlife photos and video. I've no issues whatsoever with the button itself, but rather its placement. As I look through the viewfinder, it is situated on the outer left of the Z8 body, and it must be pressed by my left hand. When using a large telephoto lens handheld, I want to keep my left hand supporting the lens at all times, which means this button is essentially useless to me, and I would much rather that it was positioned on the right side of the camera to be accessed by my right hand. I must however stress that you can configure other buttons and menu options to change the focus settings as you desire, so in no way is this a major problem, nor should it dissuade anyone from purchasing a Z8. It just seems a strange design choice, and I would appreciate and get use of this button if it was positioned where my right hand could access it. Moving on to autofocus, which is of course incredibly important for wildlife photography. The Nikon Z8 offers lots of options when it comes to autofocus, with a large number of AF area modes and subject detection options, which includes birds and animals. I utilise a range of area modes and the subject detection options too. I always change my settings to suit what I am photographing and the situation I find myself in. I don't think that there there is a one-size-fits-all solution and would expect different photographers to have different preferences on how they utilise the Z8 AF for wildlife photography. Personally, I find the flexibility and customization incredibly useful. As a whole, I have found the Z8 autofocus to be quite impressive, and it has worked really well for me. I don't think subject detection is perfect on any camera, and that includes in the Z8. Nor is it ideal to use it in every situation. It certainly doesn't have a 100% success rate. However, I have been very happy with how it has performed in suitable situations over the last few months. Combine the excellent autofocus with the camera's ability to shoot RAW files at up to 20 FPS, and I've been getting lots of in-focus images that I am very happy with. I must make it clear that I don't have access to other cameras of similar specification in this price bracket from different manufacturers, so I can't do any detailed autofocus comparisons. However, I strongly feel that an experienced wildlife photographer should have no problem whatsoever using the Z8 to capture the photographs that they are after. I'd like to take a quick break from the topic of this video to quickly mention some other wildlife photography content that will appear on my channel in the future. Throughout this video you are seeing some photographs captured during my first 4 months with the camera. During that period I've also been starting a project to photograph kestrels. I've photographed mountain hare, and I've spent some time in my photography blind during which I was treated to seeing some unexpected visitors. All photographs from those experiences will be appearing in separate respective videos, so if you would like to see those, be sure to subscribe to my channel. Back to the Nikon Z8, and it's time to give my thoughts on the sensor and image quality. The 45 megapixel stacked CMOS sensor is fantastic for wildlife photography. The shutter is of course electronic, so the camera can operate silently. Depending on what wildlife you are photographing and your proximity to your subject, this can sometimes help avoid disturbing wildlife. The sensor, along with a lens of course, helps deliver very detailed, pleasing images, which I don't think anyone would be disappointed with. At higher ISO values there is of course some noise, as you would expect. However, the latest noise reduction available in software helps deal with any potential issues. How many megapixels you need for wildlife photography is a question that has many answers depending on your individual needs. For me, I think around 45 megapixels is a great number. I like to get my compositions as good as possible on camera, which lets me make large prints when I want to. However, wildlife photographers definitely need to crop many images, and I find that 45 megapixels gives plenty scope for this while still leaving plenty megapixels for good sized quality prints. Finally, regarding the sensor, it has a sensor cover. I found that this has worked really well and has helped keep the sensor clean, even considering all the times I have fitted and removed my teleconverter. As I mentioned earlier, when it comes to photographing wildlife, at this point I have been using the Z 100-400mm S lens with and without the Z 1.4x Teleconverter. Before talking specifically about this lens, I have a few thoughts to share regarding focal length for wildlife photography. What focal length you will need will vary depending on where in the world you are, the locations you visit, the subjects you photograph, field techniques, your photographic style, how much cropping is acceptable to you, and a few other factors. I personally feel that 100-400mm is very usable to me, especially considering it becomes 140-560mm with a 1.4 teleconverter. For my own needs, I definitely feel I could benefit at times from more focal length, but I personally wouldn't want to be without a lens covering this approximate focal length range. Getting back to the Z 100-400mm S lens, and I have to say that I love this lens. The variable aperture while using it without a teleconverter is f4.5 to 5.6. I have found that to be quite nice for photographing wildlife. The focal length range offered is considerable, and the flexibility this zoom offers can be very useful indeed. On quite a few wildlife shoots, I have found myself taking photographs at the short, mid and long focal lengths, and this has helped me capture some photographs that I'd have missed without this incredible flexibility. In terms of image quality, I think this lens helps create high quality, very detailed and very sharp images. I haven't felt any need to photograph test charts because I am delighted with the results that this lens delivers. I've taken thousands of wildlife and landscape images with this lens, and I don't have any issues with the image quality whatsoever. I'm aware that online many people say the quality suffers at the longer and maximum focal lengths. Perhaps someone taking controlled test images which they study in great detail has found that to be the case. But when shooting wildlife, and as I mentioned landscapes, there is nothing that I have seen to suggest this. I am critical of my own images. I view them in detail at 100%. I do a lot of printing, and this lens delivers all the quality that I personally need. I have used the lens a lot with my Z 1.4x Teleconverter, and I have found it to be a great combination. Continuing the theme of what I have read online, many people say the image quality suffers when you put this teleconverter on the Z 100-400mm lens. Perhaps if I shoot test charts I may see that, but in all complete honesty, if there is a reduction in image quality in my wildlife images, I would really struggle to see it. I'm still extremely happy with the results using this teleconverter, and the Z8 autofocus still works really well too. Again, if the autofocus suffers, it is by a very slight margin, and I think most people would struggle to see it. What I do obviously notice is the change of available aperture values. So for example, at 560mm the widest available aperture is f8. In many situations I don't find that any sort of issue whatsoever. In fact, I may want to use f8 to get enough of my subject in focus. However, definitely at other times I would love to be shooting at say f4 or f5.6, because this may help achieve a certain look in my image, or it may help me keep ISO values down. I will say that you can still achieve very nice out of focus background shooting at 560mm and f8. It all depends on the knowledge of the photographer, the situation you are in, where your subject is positioned and so on. Overall, I think the lens and teleconverter work together very well to offer a great focal length range in a fairly small and light setup. You just need to be aware of the effects of adding the teleconverter and know when to use it and when not to use it. One last point regarding this lens paired with the Nikon Z8 is that I have found the stabilisation to be excellent. I am able to shoot at considerably slow shutter speeds if I want to, and of course if such shutter speeds are suitable for my subject and the look I am trying to achieve in my photograph. Are there any downsides to the Z 100-400mm lens? I'd say not really, other than to point out some people may wish it had an internal zoom rather than being external. I'm really enjoying using this lens, and I find the teleconverter to be very useful. As I mentioned in an earlier video which discussed my move to Nikon, I do intend to purchase a lens offering a longer focal length in the future to complement this one. That said, I feel I can achieve a lot using only this setup. To summarise my thoughts on the last few months photographing wildlife, I am very happy with the Z8 as a camera, and the Z 100-400mm lens has helped me capture some images which I am really pleased with. I'm glad I purchased the Z 1.4x Teleconverter, and I use it without hesitation, with no image quality concerns, when I feel it is a suitable tool for the situation I am in. Nikon make many fantastic lenses suitable for wildlife, and I am very aware of the potential benefits offered by their most expensive super telephoto lenses, which offer apertures such as f2.8 and f4. They would work fantastically well on the Z8 to produce images of extremely high quality. However, I still feel that many wildlife photographers would also appreciate having the Z 100 to 400mm lens as part of their kit, perhaps to complement one of those primes. For other people, the setup I've talked about in this video may well be all that they feel they need. I'll finish this video by showing you more of the images I have captured over the last 4 months while getting familiar with my Nikon Z8. Thank you for watching. I hope you have found my thoughts interesting, and I'll have much more wildlife content appearing on my channel in the future, so be sure to subscribe to see that. Until then, enjoy your wildlife photography, and I hope you'll join me in my next video.